Hello everyone, I wanted to do a quick disclaimer that this video is going to have spoilers. We're going to discuss various parts of the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC from Elden Ring, so if you want to stay spoiler free, I highly recommend skipping the video. With that said, for those of you who do watch, I hope you enjoy. Hello Wildlanders, today we're going to be doing an interview with question marks. We actually started the interview, but of course my recording broke, so we're going to rewrite history a little bit. We actually did a interview about a year ago where he beat the entire Elden Ring game, all of the main bosses, 1 damage at a time, with 1 life each, respectively. And now he has done something similar. You could say he's done it again. He beat the entire DLC like a week and a day, or a week and 2 days into it being live, bare-fisted. So how are you doing, Question? How was your experience with all of that?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for asking. And the experience was painful, but I think very rewarding at the same time, if that makes sense.
No, I watched the stream. It definitely looked painful. The rewarding, I could tell. So when I say painful, he beat Radon, which is the final boss if you haven't gotten there yet. And there were a couple attempts where he got like halfway through. He got to one attempt where he got him down to like 20% health. And it looked like he was in the clear and it was just kind of riding the ship. And then this just flurry of attacks happened that just ended the run. I think you had like full health, and then in an instant you were just gone.
I had full health, and he did the scissor attack, which I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but it's where he like swings a sword once and then the other one like right away, where it's actually undodgeable unless you have range. And then he does he brings them back out again, and I got hit by those 3 attacks in a row, and then the light, the holy light behind me then hit me 3 times and just killed me in like 5 seconds.
Yeah, something I've realized with the DLC, particularly a lot of the fights, is when you're fighting them, if you get hit, they have most of their hits are very heavy on poise breaks. Like in the main game, I had my poise as like high as it could be, and I could withstand, usually like 1 hit from every boss before my poise was broken. But with the DLC bosses, it's like any hit they do, whether it's like lightning attacks or just like they breathe on you wrong, your poise is just annihilated. I know you have the highest... Right. Did you have the highest poise break armor or the highest defense?
Yeah,
armor?
highest poise armor. Oh, my defense, right? My defense, I think for physical was, I believe, 76%. So 76% was being negated. And every time he hit me with a sword swing that's only physical, did like 25 to 30% of my health per swing with that much defense.
Yeah, and you had
crazy.
99 bigger too. It's not like you were like
packing
nothing.
It's insane. It's crazy. It really is crazy. Like, the bosses do not play on the DLC in terms of damage, for sure.
Dude, I had the swiftest wake-up call. So, I'm gonna, we're not gonna judge, okay? But to prepare for the DLC, I grabbed what I think is one of the most OP weapons. It's like, I think it's Moog's Scythe, which is like bleed, where you just spam the special. He shoots bleed everywhere and you kill everything in sight, okay?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, yeah.
I beat the game with a normal weapon. I just wanted to get through NG Plus so I could prepare for the DLC. So I come into the DLC, I switch weapons, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna use a normal weapon. I'm destroying everything with the normal weapon too. It's not that hard, in my opinion. Like, I'm just like, okay, I'm killing all these guys. I get to the Divine Lion, and I kid you not, for like 30 minutes, I could not get him past like 10% health. There were multiple times where I'd walk into that arena, do 0 damage, and die right away. The bosses do not play.
It makes me feel less bad because that's kind of the same experience I had with the lion, which made me very happy when I realized I didn't actually have to fight it to beat the game.
Did you beat it?
No, I haven't killed the lion yet. I do plan on doing all bosses DLC barefist in the future, though, if the video does well. Let me say that.
Yeah, barefisted is quite the... For reference, barefisted is... Oh, wait, no. How many bosses do you have left to do barefist?
What do you mean?
So you said you're gonna
like all together.
Yeah, because you did most of the
Oh,
bosses, right?
yeah. Well, there's 30 bosses in the entire DLC. There's 10 remembrance bosses. So I guess I did kill I killed 3 side bosses, and then I killed 4 main bosses. So that'd be 7. So what, 23 bosses left?
Oh, geez, no, you still gotta wait. You still got your work cut out for you.
I know. But at least the main game's done, though. Probably the hardest bosses are out of the way, pretty much.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Real quick on the lion boss. So it did take me a while, but I actually realized I thought it was the most well-balanced boss of the main bosses. It wasn't my favorite, but it was the most well-balanced because once you learn, like, there's just usually 2 extra dodge rolls you have to do per attack flurry. And once you realize that, it becomes less difficult because my issue was I would always get, like, hit with what I thought was, like, a stray attack. But really, it was FromSoft predicting the fact that you thought it was over. And I kind of liked that. That's kind of been the spirit of Elden Ring, which I know wasn't everyone's favorite. You know, they felt like, have you ever played Dark Souls 3?
Yes, a little bit.
So in Dark Souls 3, people felt like it was more of like a dance. You know, the enemy would attack for a while, and then they'd run out of steam, and you'd have this huge opening for a while to just your turn to kind of go ham. Whereas Elden Ring was more like you get attacked for 30 seconds, and then you have 0.5 seconds to attack, and then you get attacked for 30 seconds, you have 0.5 seconds to attack.
Right.
And I get that that's not everybody's kind of cup of tea, but this was my first Souls game that I really got into, and I thought once you figure out how the mechanics work, you get used to jump attacking, you know, dodge rolling, your specials, etc., it becomes less of like just sitting there for an hour, and usually you can do quite a bit in between their attacks. I did not feel that way with certain bosses. Let's talk about Radahn. So with Radahn, and just in general, like, the quality of the DLC was really good. I really liked a lot of things the DLC had going on. However, talking about some of the areas, I felt like it lacked polish. I felt like he was not as choreographed as I would prefer. For instance, when he does his flurry attacks at you, he just like flies from, you know, wherever he's at towards you, and he does like 4 attacks in a row. It was really hard for me conceptually to understand when I'm actually supposed to dodge. It wasn't like, oh, I know I'm supposed to dodge, but I just misclicked, or I wasn't, you know, I was being greedy or whatever. But I genuinely just kind of randomly pressed the button and hoped that I would actually dodge it. What was your opinions, experiences, etc. with Radahn, polish, and just kind of your thoughts?
So what I'd say is, again, we said this in the other recording, and it got corrupted, which is crazy, 2nd time in a row. But again, the arena is ridiculously messed up. Like, since it's not flat, a lot of the attacks need position. Mainly the one where he goes up into the sky with the meteor, shoots it at you, and then he does like a holy explosion, pretty much. You have to pretty much be in the middle of the arena. Because you have to have room to run away and be able to dodge it in time and be able to run away far enough to where you don't get hit by the 7 million attacks he throws at you when he teleports. And again, there's just a lot of attacks where, like, if, you know, he's, for example, if I'm lower than him or if I'm higher than him and he teleports to me, he'll just be floating midair for about 30 seconds before he falls down. And it's completely glitched, and he just hits you with everything because you can't dodge it because he's literally above you, just hitting you in the head pretty much. And it's pretty ridiculous. Something they definitely need to fix. And I'm surprised they haven't, honestly. First off, because they already did a day 1 patch, so I'm surprised they didn't fix it in that. And I'm also surprised that with the 2 years that they were given, they didn't like test the boss enough to see that happen 1 time. But I mean, overall, I think it's a pretty good boss. But I just think there's a couple things that need to be calibrated to make it a little bit more fair, if that makes sense.
Well, let's talk about. For one, I agree, but let's talk about your favorite part is when he stomps. So, the Radahn stomp, we've talked about this a couple times. We are both pretty convinced that there's some sort of inconsistency with it. I'm not sure if it just happens occasionally or what, but there's very often with Radahn's stomp attack where I feel like, you know, usually you can tell when you fought a boss enough, you can tell when you're off timing and you're gonna get hit. But I feel like I'm perfectly on timing, nothing has changed, I've waited till the last second to dodge. And then I dodge through his stomp attack, and I still take damage for some reason, despite being directly on top of him. So it's not like I'm far away and the ground just kind of eventually catches up with you, which is what happens sometimes if you dodge away from him. And I think that's kind of another plot hole that maybe needs to be looked at by FromSoft, because I also experienced issues with the Radahn fight. I experienced a couple different bugs. Now, for me, the bugs probably didn't matter as much because I think I would have lost those runs anyways. But for someone like you who spent 3 hours into, 3.5 hours to finally beat him, I believe was like the final runtime. Those bugs really add up because you're going to experience them over and over and over again.
Right, and honestly, it's not even just because I spent so long in the boss. Like, I feel like it got pretty consistent to where, like, people who are playing this game normally are going to notice them. Like, it happens a lot. And he likes to do those attacks a lot. You know, like, even if you're fighting him normally, you'll probably see him do, the one attack that I was talking about where he pretty much, like, floats in the air. You'll probably see it about 6 or 7 times per fight. And it's just, like, it happens, like, 50% of the time. So, I mean, people are going to see these glitches. It's not just going to be, obscure runs that happen to, stay long enough to where he starts messing up or something.
No, you're absolutely right. And I mentioned this earlier, but I actually had a different bug, but with the same instance. So he, Radahn floats into the air. He does this massive AoE, just kind of explosion of holy damage that you can either dodge through if you know the timing or run out of. What I usually did is I would run out of it, and then after it blows up, I would instantly run towards Radahn and start attacking him to get in some free hits before he starts, hurting me. And what happened was I ran into an experience where he was invulnerable. He just wasn't taking any damage. And the issue was not that I couldn't reach him because I was using a ranged attack at point blank range. He isn't moving. So it didn't miss him or, it wasn't an issue of reaching him. He just did not take damage. And I actually had a similar issue with just a normal enemy in the game. So the giant fire enemies that like spew fire from their pots or whatever, I thought that they were cool. I have some opinions on them, but I ran into one of them, and I have a clip of this. I might post it to this video or my final review video, whichever, but they were invulnerable. They took no damage whatsoever, and I swung at them for like 4 or 5 minutes before I was like, okay, they have no health bar. Their health bar is not appearing and or going down. And,
right.
I had fought them enough to know they treat the player differently depending on how close or how far away you are. That's just how a lot of the enemies in the game are, period, right? They know to do a ranged attack if you're running away or if you're healing. There's like, there's a chance they'll do it. Well, I was directly on top of this enemy, and it was actually treating me like I was far away. It was only using ranged attacks, whereas typically it does like this weird stomp with one leg, you just jump over it, or it jumps and you have to really jump over the flames at that point, but it was only doing ranged attacks. So I say all this to say, I noticed kind of a large enough amount of bugs in my playthrough that were very obviously bugs. I went into one of the caves and there's this big fire-headed guy, or big pot guy who shoots fire at you. Not the same fire giant guy, but just like a statue almost that shoots fire at you. I'm not sure if you experienced those. And what happened is you pull this lever and the lift he's standing on comes down. And what's supposed to happen is he's supposed to be on the lift coming down. He stayed floating in the air for a while. He never actually just like came down. He's not like a flying creature or anything. It was just...
Oh, wait. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. I think I literally went in that exact same dungeon. Wait, is that like the one like he's like on the right and then on the left there's like a thing you have to go through and then pull the lever?
Yes.
I think I know what you're talking about. It's like a big... Yeah, and it shoots like Yeah, I shot like fireballs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that. That same exact thing happened to me, and it actually was weird. I think I got it on stream too. I was like running through it, and I was like, okay, he's floating, so I'm just gonna go through him. And then I just couldn't go through. There was like a box there where I just couldn't go through it. And then like 5 seconds later, just like, oh, he's down there now, and it was just weird. I was like, okay.
Yeah, it's, and another bug, again, a quick preface, like, neither of us are saying we didn't like the game. We did very much like the game, or at least I can say that I did, and from what I understand, you really like the game as well. But
yeah, I like the DLC. I like the DLC.
We just noticed a distinct lack of polish that in the bit, because I played day one Elden Ring when it came out. I had it preloaded, and then like a little nerd, I loaded it the second it was live, and I played it, for long stretches of time. And the biggest issue I noticed was some FPS stutters with the base game, but other than that, it was very well polished.
I saw those in the DLC too.
Yes, that's something else I want to talk about.
Of FPS stuff.
I do want to talk about that in a little bit too, but it was mostly bug. It didn't have a bunch of bugs, let's put it that way. I'm sure I found some bugs that I don't really remember, but it wasn't enough that it stuck with me in memory. Whereas with the DLC, I found enough bugs that I just started getting my camera ready to record, to show them off for the review I'm going to do, to like make the point. Like one bug I found that apparently is just a bug that everyone has, because I saw messages like, you can leave a message in the world to say, try finger, butthole, or whatever, which I fucking love. But there's this area where if you walk into it and you like roll towards it, it glitches and you can see under the map, you can see everywhere around you, and then it gives you like this notification like entered Scoutus Alto or whatever. And I rolled into it like 100 times, and then for like 10 minutes I just kept getting the notification, Scoutus Alto, because it wasn't intended. Right. So I really liked the game, but the amount of bugs in it became to the point for me where things would happen and I wasn't sure whether or not it was the game just being like, throwing bullshit at you because that's what it does, or if it was the game not working properly. Did you ever have that experience?
Yeah, the same way I felt about it. Okay. Yeah, I felt that mostly in bosses where there was attacks where like that's not supposed to hit me, but I don't know if they just put that in the game because it's Elden Ring or if it's literally a glitch. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
it could go either way, really.
Exactly, and that is...
Like, same thing with the stomp. That's what I was saying. Like, I mean, there's a chance that maybe I'm just happen to be like, when I actually do roll it correctly, I'm rolling in a certain position that you're supposed to be, or it could be a glitch. Like, I don't know for 100%. I guess we're not going to know until they either fix it or they don't fix it.
No, I think you're totally right, and that is one of the biggest letdowns that I did have from the DLC. It was the biggest letdown for me personally. That it did lack quite a bit of polish, and it was well rounded enough that I experienced it in all areas of the game, from the early parts to the middle to just like some of the side quests. I know that you ran into a bug, like, because you mentioned that you always had like one issue with each boss that really stuck out to you, or at least for the main bosses you fought. What was yours for Mesmer?
The impaling thing. When he does his, what would you call that? Like his charge with his the spear at you, and when you dodge it, again, 90% of the time you're fine, but the other 10%, you'll dodge it, you'll sit there for about 1 second, and then you'll just take damage and fall into the floor, and it makes no sense, like, at all. It's really weird, and I know it's not supposed to happen. Like, everybody in my chat was saying, yeah, that's a glitch, you just have to deal with it. I was like, okay. And it wouldn't be that big of a deal if it didn't do much damage, but you get hit by it as if you sat there and he just straight on hit you with the spear. And it does like almost half my health bar, and I have 99 vigor in this playthrough, so it's like, bro, it's kind of crazy.
No, I have noticed like kind of like similar things with some of the bosses. I think, and I mentioned this in the last talk, but my biggest complaint about Mesmer was kind of in the different direction. I felt like he was too easy to get around in terms of his moveset. So something I noticed with the DLC, which I actually do like this about the DLC, it was a big W for me, is they put a lot of emphasis on paying attention to where the enemy holds their weapons. So, for instance, if the enemy has their weapon in their left hand, usually you want to dodge a certain way to get around it. So, for instance, with Mesmer, I call it roll left simulator because he has his weapon in his, I think it's left hand. So he just dodge left, and he literally does not hit you. Like I roll left one time, and I dodge most of his combos just with that one roll or two rolls. And then he usually has like this delayed attack that gets at you, kind of like with the jab or with his serpents. So for those, it's just one delayed roll and you're through it. And I didn't feel that way with Rolana. Rolana was really tough to learn and I liked it. I didn't feel that way with Divine Beast, and I really didn't feel that way with Radon. So I was a little bit bummed with Mesmer because as hyped as he was, he got this cutscene. He's the son of America, fuck yeah. I don't think he was that difficult by comparison for me personally.
I mean, they showed him off as like the main character or main boss. I mean, he was like, you know, he's on the front page of the DLC. He's the one with the figure. I mean, you know.
Yeah, I did expect more, which is not, I don't know. I did find the DLC hard, and I found him hard, but when you're looking at how difficult Rolana was, when you're looking at how difficult Radon was, when you're looking at how difficult Divine Beast was, he felt a little bit out of place for me personally in the difficulty department.
Right.
With that said,
I will say one thing. Oh, there's one thing I didn't say when we were doing it earlier that I just thought of. In phase 2 of Mesmer, the one attack I really don't like is when he does like the big snake attack. Do you know what I mean? Like where he has like 20 billion snakes like come and hit you at the same time, and then after he does like either the snake that comes down with like I don't know, like a sun in him pretty much, or he goes down and does his own combo. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, the problem I have with that is he likes to do it when you're close to him, and when he does that, you know, you would think you'd have enough time to get away, but the problem is he does like a big AoE that like hits you like 12 different times, and then you don't have enough time to like get out of the way and run away, and I feel like that's kind of a flawed moveset, and it got me hit so many times because it's really hard to dodge the AoE because it's kind of hard to predict when he's going to do it. But maybe that's just a me thing, I don't know, I just saw it and was like, it's kind of weird.
You know what? That made me think of something. So something, and I didn't notice this for any of the bosses other than Mesmer and Radon. Because those two, I got quite a bit of poise breaks in, which meant, you know, that I would go for the crit and do massive damage that way. So both of them had this sort of broken method of reducing how important your crits were. So for Mesmer, if he's in his snake form, you know how he's like coming down as a serpent? You can still hit him before he comes out of the serpent's mouth or whatever. So there were a couple times where I would know that was coming, I'd roll out of the way, jump, heavy attack him, and then break his stance. And I would hear the sound, but because he came out of the snake, it nullified it. And you, even like when he was out of the snake, he was not you could not get your crit in. It was like just what's the word? It was nullified, which was really frustrating because you would think that you would still be able to kind of, I worked towards breaking a stance, I'd be able to get the crit. Well, with Radon, there was something similar. What would happen was, you know, after you get him down by 35% health, he goes into phase 2. Well, if you are critting him, and the first, because the crits do 2 portions of damage. The first portion just does like a little bit of damage, and then the second portion does a lot of damage. If that first portion of damage takes him into the 35% zone, he goes straight to phase 2, and you no longer get to do any of that second portion of damage. So like, and that sounds kind of like, oh, well, not a big deal. But the second portion of damage is like 3 times the amount of the first portion.
Yeah.
So it's actually like the big chunk of the pie. And it's completely nullified by that.
Yeah, I kind of saw that on Radon too. It's kind of random, but, you know, since I parry him on that fight, most of the time I would just he would hit the enough to go into phase 2 with the first thing, so I don't get my rest of my damage. It's really not a big deal for me because I parry him so much, but I just think it's kind of annoying, especially if you're using a sword that's going to do a ton. Then you have to go get that attack in phase 2 instead of phase 1, and phase 1's way easier. But one thing I'll say about Mesmer though is he's super easy to poise break. Like super easy, at least for me, because like I literally was able to poise break him like I think 4 or 5 times in phase 1 with bare fists, and bare fists do no poise. So if you're using a weapon, like I feel like if you're doing heavies, it should be pretty easy to poise break him. That's one thing I noticed. He's like the only boss I was able to poise break without obviously using like parries or anything.
Yeah, he again, I wish he was a little bit more difficult. Because I agree, his poise break was really easy for me too. Something I noticed as well with him, and this was a one-off, but it was kind of in the bugs department, is I believe, how he like shoots like a fireball at you or something? He like shoots like some sort of fire. Yep. So what happened was he shot fire at me, but I knew he was going to, and I knew he was about to go in phase 2. So I went, okay, I'm going to range attack him with my sword's like range slice. So my range slice hits him. The fire did not make contact because I'm big brain. We go into phase 2. Well, the fire is still there. It actually still hits me after phase 2.
That's funny.
I was so mad because traditionally, in all the other Elden Ring bosses, their attacks disappear when they go into phase 2, and it's kind of like a hard reset for everybody. I'm assuming that wasn't intended because it did not feel like the spirit of the game, but okay, so you just beat, you beat the game, you beat all of the DLC bosses and such. What is kind of the timeline for the video, as well as kind of what is the tone you're looking at with the video?
So currently, I mean, obviously things can change, I don't know, maybe if I last second, like, oh, I need to write a new script because I don't like this one as much. But at least currently, the video will be out in about a week and a half or so, really depending on how fast I get the script done and how fast I can make timestamps for everything. But should be about a week and a half from now. It'll be a little bit different depending on, when you post this, but, give or take about a week and a half from this current moment. And for the tone of the video, I'm going to do the same as I've done for my other videos. I don't know if you saw the sky shot video that I posted like 2 or 3 weeks ago. But same thing as that and the 1 damage one. They're all kind of like how would I explain it? Like, kind of like a story, if that makes sense. Did you see the 1 damage video, by the way? The edited one?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, it's not just like a recap of it. Like there's a whole script, and I kind of go through it like that instead of just like replaying the live stream footage, if that makes sense. So kind of just like a story, pretty much, like going from one end to the other end.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I think, because it's definitely got a lot of material, because it kind of is a story. It has a lot of ups and downs. I've watched your streams on and off while you were doing the challenge, and I would leave, because I can't sit there for like, all day. So I'd leave, and I'd be like, okay, he should be about halfway now. And I'd come back and you're about halfway. And then I see you have like 6 flasks left. And I'm like, oh shoot, you're only halfway and you're down. Or I'd come back and you're looking fine with like 14 flasks. So I definitely recommend checking out the video when it comes out. I'll post that, if you Discord me, I'll post that on my page as well, that the video's out, so that like people know to look. Because I found the one health fire giant video to be pretty cool personally. I really liked it. Right. So with that,
I'll make sure to do that though. I'll make sure to do that.
For sure. With that, what did you think of the DLC as a whole? Like we've talked about quite a bit of our complaints with some of the bosses and the bugs and such. What did you think of the DLC, like outside of just that alone?
I'd say it's very fun, and I would give it a honest 7 out of 10, which I think is pretty good. And if they polished it, I would give it an 8.5 out of 10. So if they would just finish some of that polished stuff up, then at the current position, I give it 8.5. Some people might be like, oh, that's still too low, but you got to take in mind, I haven't even fought the side bosses yet, so my opinion can completely change by the point that I've gotten through like everything in the DLC, but at least just for the main bosses and the main path that you have to take to beat it itself, I would give it a 7 to 7.5. If they add polish, I would say 8.5. I think that's pretty fair.
So what do you think for you would take it from 8.5 to 10 out of 10? And also, DLC aside, what would you rate the base game as it is now?
I think more good bosses. Which again, this is what I'm saying. There could be a lot of nice, the other Remembrance bosses could be really fun, and I haven't gotten to them yet, so it could easily be a 10 out of 10 for me if I go through a little bit more. Though I do think if they don't fix the polish, I think the most I could go up to is a 9.5, and I think that's fair. A game needs polish, especially the main bosses that are going to be focused on the most in the media. For the main game, I would give it probably. I'd probably give it a 10 out of 10. Honestly, I really don't have any complaints with the main game. So
that's the only acceptable answer.
Makes sense. Yeah. I'd give it a 10 out of 10, honestly. Like, I think everything is pretty polished, and there's such a big map and everything. It's like, I feel like you can't not like the game unless you just get so upset, just keep dying. That's the only way I can see someone, like, not enjoying the game.
Yeah, I think there's one caveat to that, and for some people, they're not a fan of the Souls style of game, which is understandable. I think it's the wrong opinion, right, but I can understand it. Jokes aside, but really, if you're even remotely interested in fighting games and things like this, or combat games, I should say, that are like this, I do agree. I think the base game's a 10 out of 10. I'm going to reserve my official rating for the review video I put out, so you'll have to watch that. But it's in the similar vein of like what I would rate, why I rate it the way I do has a lot to do with some of the polish and things like that.
Right.
Something we discussed previously is the base game is a lot more memorable with its locations than the DLC. And some of that is, you're in the locations a lot longer, you've been playing it a lot longer, but also some of it just is, I think, atmosphere and the verticality. Yeah. You can be in the same, spot on the map, but you can be up a layer, a land of masses above you and a land of masses below you. And I think for me, I kind of got lost in where even am I on the map. Like very often I'd look on the map and have no idea how to get to somewhere I was looking to go. Whereas with base game Elden Ring, if I was in Limgrave, I knew it. The atmosphere was just so specific to Limgrave. Or if I was going to Caelid,
I just thought about something. And this is a complaint that kind of has to do with the map. There's two areas in the game that you don't need to go to, but if you want to fully level up your, Erdtree fragments, or whatever you want to call it, the blessing level, you have to go to those two areas. And to get there, you have to kill a side boss. And you know what? If I was playing with weapons, this probably wouldn't even be something I talk about. But those side bosses have 30,000 health, respectively, more than the Elden Beast. And let me just say, I did get my stuff fully leveled, so you don't know what that means. I had to kill them. And the first one took an hour and a half. I spent an hour and a half killing one side boss. The second one took 2.5 hours. I spent 2.5 hours fighting a side boss to enter one area that had like 2 fragments. Yeah, I don't like that you have to kill side bosses to get to certain areas. I feel like it should be opened up to you by main bosses or just by being able to go there. That's just me though.
I gotta say, man, you gotta get good. You're actually using the Shadow Tree. By the way, they're pronounced Shadow Tree fragments. I don't know if you know that, but the
really?
Language they're written in. So
why are they spelled like that?
It's from a different language, I believe. But it's Shadow Tree fragments. Like I read that the other day.
Scadu, so it's not Scadu Tree. It's Shadow Tree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is kind of a cool touch. That's definitely FromSoft in a nutshell. But I want to say, I know that a lot of people talked kind of in the similar vein you did about how important the Shadow Tree fragments were. I honestly kind of forgot about them. I finished the game at, I think, 12, but I never really looked for them. I just kind of randomly would use them when I remembered I even had them. I felt like I used regular weapons, so it's a different experience than bare-fisting it. But I mean, for those who did play, regular weapons and aren't masochists, I felt like it was very well balanced in that respect. There was really never a point where I'm like, oh man, I need to go find X thing to be able to beat this boss. It was, okay, I'm nowhere near beating this boss. You could give me 4 lives and I'd still probably lose. Or, okay, I'm really close to beating this boss. I just kind of need to play a little bit better. Now, I don't know if you
For
can
me,
really...
I was... Sorry, I don't want to overlap on you.
Oh, no, you're good. I was going to say, I was actually like transitioning. I don't know if you can really relate to that or not, because obviously your experience and play style, your playthrough was much different than mine has been, but I'm kind of curious on your thoughts about, for one, the Shadow Tree fragments just in general as like the buff and like them being implemented, and 2, how important were they?
So I think they're pretty good. I mean, they make sense. A lot of people are struggling with the DLC to begin with, so giving people kind of a way if they need it to, do more damage or have more resistance, I think just makes sense. If you don't need it, then you don't need it. If you need it, then go for it. For me, I was only like level 12, and then Radon happened, and then I went to level 20. So, the reason being, literally because, Radon happened, and I was like, I need the best chance possible to beat this boss. Like, I need the best defense I can get. So with level 20, I think I get like 5% more defense than I had at like level 12 or so. And I get about 8 more damage per parry, not per punch. I think I got 1 more. So instead of doing 5, I was doing 6 per normal punch. And with parry, instead of doing like 88, I was doing like 94, I think, or 96. So again, really not great because it's a 5% buff per thing, but like when you're doing like barely any damage, 5% is nothing, you know what I mean? But I think it helped a little bit. Like I think, having the more defense has probably helped me, and a little bit more damage means less parries, probably not by too much, but all the damage adds up when you're fighting a boss for 3+ hours, you know what I mean? So I would say they're pretty helpful for my run. I don't think I'd need them if I was using weapons, obviously, but for people who do need them, I mean, I don't, go for it,
Yeah, no, I thought that they were a great way of helping to adjust the difficulty. And let's say that you were kind of struggling and you didn't have it maxed out. You could just go grab those to help give you a little bit of an edge. I did like that touch. I thought it was an interesting way of helping your character's strength outside of just summons. Because for me, quick story, when I first played Elden Ring, I beat every main boss with summons. I was trash, not because I used summons because I was trash. And then my second playthrough, I beat every boss except for the Godskin duo because I hate them. I beat every boss without summons except for them. And then the third time I beat the game, I beat every boss just without summons, including the Godskin trash duo, whatever.
Yes.
But the DLC, I was very determined to beat the game without summons. I really wanted to like prove to myself, and I thought it would be a cool achievement. And realistically, I like that the Shadow Tree fragments were an option for me, because when I was struggling against Radon, I did keep in mind, I'm like, I could just use summons and kind of cheat myself, or if I want to, and if I had taken too much longer, I probably would have, I could have just hunted for the remaining 8 levels of Shadow Tree fragments. Because looking at them, they're realistically like levels, or they're like extra armor. That's really what they are. They're like extra armor and like an extra level up for your sword or whatever. You do a little bit more damage, and you can take a little bit more damage. And I kind of like that, as opposed to your only other option being I summon like an extra fighter, which is a much different dynamic in combat.
Right. That makes sense.
Speaking of like the difficulty and stuff, a lot of the discourse right now, and we mentioned this before, but like on Steam even, the reviews are very mixed about the DLC because of the difficulty. What was your thoughts on the difficulty of the DLC?
I wouldn't say that difficult. I mean, if I'm just going off of like my run and not thinking about it as if I was using weapons, I would still say it's not that difficult. Radon obviously is, I would say, decently difficult, but I'd say every single attack he does is learnable. And I know I said I was going to talk about swords, but if you are using weapons and your fights aren't going for 3 hours straight, I think you can get consistent enough with dodges where you could no-hit it with enough practice where, when you're doing a 3-hour fight, you really can't get that consistent. You know what I mean? So I'd say honestly, not that difficult if you actually take the time to practice the bosses.
Did you think it was more, less, or equally difficult as the base game?
Oh, way more.
Okay.
Way more. Yeah. I'm honestly surprised they did that. I really am, because I feel like a lot of Elden Ring players are going to have a considerably hard time with this DLC. At least with the final boss, that is. So I'm pretty surprised with the route that they went down, because I was expecting it to be just like the base game, where they kind of like they don't make it as harder as like older Souls games. That's what I was expecting anyways. That's why I was more like, yeah, we're gonna do bare fist for the first DLC playthrough. And then I saw the first boss and I was like, okay, so they let FromSoft cook.
No, we aren't. I would agree with that. I definitely think the DLC was tougher. I think the enemies did more damage. I think it was tougher in some of the ways that most games are tougher. You know, the enemies are tankier, they do more damage, but also, more importantly, they were more difficult because they were more complex, and you had to be more particular with when you were dodging, how you were dodging. Radahn's a great example of how you're dodging, right? Specifically his phase 2. So. Like, if you're dodging just towards him straight, there's a good chance the holy light will hit you. Or if you're dodging away, you can get hit by his holy light. Whereas if you're dodging to the left or the right or whatever, it's much more impactful. The same was true of R'hllana. If you dodged towards her weapon swings, it was a lot better than if you dodged away from them, because then you were likely to get hit by the second swing and the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth swing, because she's insane. So I did like that. I like the way that they made it more difficult. I don't think it was too hard, because if I can beat it without summons, and I'm not very good at the game, I definitely think it's doable for the average player base with summons and, you know, the Shadow Tree fragments and whatever else you come up with. You know, something no one really talks about, or hasn't really been talking about, is there's also things like you can just throw pots at them. Like, you can just inflict them with like Scarlet Rot and such. And just run away for a minute while they just tick their health away. You know, like, there are a lot of options in the game. I do plan on making a video of like some of the different ways to help with the DLC, but it's certainly doable, and I personally wouldn't get discouraged just because you're struggling with it.
I guess the thing is, do you know who Kai Cenat is?
Yes. He's a streamer, right?
Yeah, he's the biggest on Twitch, and he has always had a big problem with Elden Ring. Like, I'm talking 120 hours to beat the base game, just going the normal boss route, like no extra stuff. And you know, he went to the DLC and he completed it, I think, 2 days ago. He spent 70 hours straight fighting Radahn before beating him. And even though it's a lot of time, I think the fact that he was able to do that kind of shows that, like, I feel like anybody can really do it if they put enough time practicing. Because 70 hours is pretty crazy, I'm not gonna lie. But, you know, it definitely probably built up to that, you know, win.
I thought you were gonna say he took 70 hours to beat the DLC. I'm not gonna lie.
No, that's Radahn.
Well, props to him for sticking it out. I think something I really did like, complaints aside, bugs aside, something I really did like about the bosses is that they were very learnable. And you could really, no matter what your skill level was, your intelligence level in terms of like your game knowledge, there we go, your game knowledge, etc., you could come up with a strategy to make the fight significantly less difficult, you know? Even with Radahn. Right. I am not someone who has a lot of game knowledge. I have a lot of combat knowledge, but in terms of like all the different items and, you know, what items are good for this, what talismans, etc., I'm not nearly as good, but I was still able to come up with the better strat. I'm like, okay, this isn't working. I'm always running out of stamina. Let's grab the stamina regen talisman. Okay, I'm surviving with a little bit more health than I need. I can get rid of the plus health talisman, and I can use the poise break talisman or whatever, and find a winning strategy. And that's something I really like about the DLC is we get a lot more talismans from the DLC and all the side content, that it gives you even more options for how to take on, you know, Radahn or any of the bosses. And I think that was a huge W in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, I agree too.
So, I have one more main topic that I wanted to ask you about. So, you mentioned you actually struggled to beat the fire giant, just normally beat the fire giant originally. So, how does the average person go from being able to doing what you were doing, which was struggling against just typical bosses like everyone else, and jumping straight to trying these insane challenges, or just trying challenges in general, maybe not quite as insane as yours, and how do you practice for it and get started?
So, it's actually a really funny story. I really was not good at the game. In fact, I had like pretty much a friend who I've not talked to in like 2 years. Pretty crazy to think about. But me and him pretty much played the DLC together. We talked about it anyways. And I was just stuck on the fire giant. Like I could just not kill him. I honestly, it was so long ago. I don't know if it was like first phase or second phase or both. But I was just having such a big problem. And I was like, you know what? I'm so done with this. And it was near kind of the beginning of the game. Not the beginning of the game, but like the beginning of like, you know, the game coming out. So there was already so many glitches. So I used like the belfry glitch, which I don't know if you know about, but like the 4 belfries or whatever. You can go through like a portal, and then like if you close your game out, you'll just happen to spawn in like the main area of Farm Azula, completely skipping the whole fight and, you know, burning the tree and everything. And that's what I did. It was pretty funny. I just completely skipped the boss on that run, and I just continued forward. And it probably didn't work very well, because I'm sure I got a reality check when I hit Godskin Duo, even though, to be honest, I still don't even remember what happened with that run. I don't know if I skipped that boss too or what. But all I know is I had a huge problem with the fire giant, and that run was completely just me using Mimic and using weapons. I was terrible, like actually terrible. And I think the way it all started, started with a Scumnut video. Do you know who that is?
I'm not familiar.
No? Okay, so he's a decently sized Elden Ring YouTuber. He has like 400,000 or something. And he does a bunch of challenge runs. And at the time, he was talking about, he made like a whole video about like the impossible run. And it was like a bare fist run. And I was like, let me try. I don't know why I thought it was a good idea, but that's what I did. That's how I started.
I can't beat the fire giant. Let's go get him bare-fisted.
So I went to Margit, and yeah, I sucked. Really did suck. And then I just kept practicing. Eventually, after a long time, killed Margit bare fist. Went to the next one, did Godric. Boom, went to the next one, I killed Renala. Went to the next one, first ever person to kill Godfrey bare fist, which is really probably not that big of a deal, but I'll say that. Then went to Morgott. I had a pretty big issue with him. I think I eventually beat him. I think it was later though, after like a lot of practice and stuff. I don't think it was right then. And then, you know, eventually I did a whole bare fist run, and that's kind of how I started getting better at the game. And then what I did is I would just, not every day, but every once in a while, I would just practice the bosses for hours on end till I got used to it. And I think I kind of also learned how to get used to newer bosses, you know, which definitely helped out in the DLC. But again, this is like 2 years ago. This is a long time ago. This was like the very start of Elden Ring. So just multiple times of like practicing eventually leads up to the 1 damage challenge happening. Obviously, I did challenges way before that were easier, still difficult, but easier than that. The 1 damage challenge was actually supposed to be a joke. I probably said that on that interview, but some person on my Twitch was like, you know, you should do a 1 damage challenge, LOL, or something like that, because we were messing around with the armor and realized we could do 1 damage. And then eventually they just kept bringing that joke up over and over again until eventually I was like, all right, we're going to do it. Or just try Margit at least and see where it goes. And I think that run probably made me a lot better at the game too. Obviously, I had to have a lot of skill to be able to do that to begin with, but I think spending so much time with those bosses, I feel like I've completely mastered them more than I can, you know. So, I mean, that's kind of how that whole thing started. Started from sucking at the game to pretty much forcing myself to learn every boss's moveset to the best of my ability. And then that leads us to now.
That just sounds like practice is really, which, I mean, it's just kind of a general, you know, theme for life, but practice is key. You know, putting in the time, not necessarily always trying to kill a boss, but trying to learn a boss, which is... They work together, but they're not the same thing. So that makes a lot of sense.
By the way, I have your opinion. I want your opinion on something real quick.
Let's hear it.
So I was fighting a boss before, right? And to learn that boss, I think it was a side boss. I don't even remember. It was a hard side boss though. I was learning it, right? Because I wanted to do a bare fist. And to learn it, I used Cheat Engine to give myself infinite health so I could practice the boss, right? So every time I die, I don't have to, watch a loading screen for 5 minutes, then go back in. And so that's how I learned the boss. I spent 5-ish hours just learning the dodges. Okay, I did it on a different save, not even the main save. Then I went back on the main save, now knowing and learning the boss, and I killed it bare fist. And everybody was like, oh, that's, it's really awesome, stuff like that. And then one guy asked me, did you use Cheat Engine to practice the boss? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, that's cheating. What is your opinion on that? I just want your opinion on that.
So, technically, he's right? In a technicality, but in a common sense reality, it doesn't matter. For one,
I guess the problem is every no-hit runner that I know has done that same thing to learn the boss perfectly, and I don't know if I would say that they're cheaters. You know what I mean?
I don't consider it cheating. Even let's say it'd be one thing if you use Cheat Engine and you killed the boss that way and you posted as some challenge, but let's say you didn't. Let's say that you did beat the boss with Cheat Engine on. It still doesn't matter. It's like a solo, you're just playing the game however you want to play the game. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Now let's take it a step back, which is what you were doing. You used Cheat Engine to practice, turned off Cheat Engine,
and not only that, on a different save too.
Yeah, on a different save
too.
And then
so it didn't corrupt my game or something.
Which is smart, yeah.
Yeah.
You use that to learn the boss, and then you did just use the practice you put in to actually beat the boss. So no, that's not cheating. There's nothing wrong with that. And that guy is, I don't know if he's jealous or salty or what, but no, I think that's a perfectly valid way to do it because you're not learning anything from 6 seconds of loading screen plus walking time to enter the thing. You know what I mean?
I don't think it changes literally anything except it's just wasting time.
Exactly.
That's the only thing that happens. Having to wait for a loading screen, then having to walk back into the boss arena, that's maybe 30, 40 seconds. That's 40 seconds I could be still in the boss arena. And it gets tiring too. You think I really want to sit there and watch a loading screen 100 times when I'm trying to learn? It's really just not intuitive.
Not to mention, I don't know if you beat it first try or not, but if you died, you still had to go through the loading screen when you were actually attempting the boss. So it's
right.
When people say cheating, usually you were cheating yourself or someone else out of something. You were not cheating yourself out of anything, and no one else was cheated out of it either, because you still beat the boss the same way they would have had to. So, no, I wouldn't consider it cheating.
All right, just wanted your opinion, but thank you.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. So, my last question of the interview for you is, what is next for you? What's on the horizon? What kind of plans or ideas or concepts are you looking to explore going forward?
So that depends on how the video does. But let's just say it does good, just for an example, right? If the video does well, then first thing I'll probably do is do a part 2 where I'll beat every boss in the DLC bare fist. That'll probably be I'll probably make it a 2-day, 3-day marathon stream or something for fun. That'll probably be what's there. Then after that happens, I'll probably do the 1 damage challenge part 2. So just, normal DLC bosses, main bosses, 1 damage. Then maybe probably Sky Shot after that, and then we'll just see what happens from there.
What is Sky
maybe
Shot?
All bosses, 1 damage. So it's an Astral War on the bow, and when you shoot it up, it goes in the exact position to where literally it does not hit at all. I've gone 30 minutes straight without getting a single hit on because it goes the exact same position you shoot them on. So if the boss moves a centimeter forward, it doesn't hit them. I'm serious, it's that bad. You have to watch the video. It's a good video. But I'm serious. It's so terrible. You have to wait for the boss to literally be completely still, and the time up is so terrible. You have to sit there for literally 15 seconds shooting the bow up in the air, and then you have to wait 5 seconds for it to come down. It's so bad. It's the worst Ash of War ever, and we have the first ever run beating the game with it. So that was pretty fun.
Heck yeah, that sounds terrible but entertaining. Terrible to do, entertaining to watch.
Right.
Cool. Sounds like you've got plenty of stuff going on. I definitely hope that the video you put out does well and such. Was there any final words you wanted to say? Any shout outs for yourself or other people that you wanted to do before we wrap up?
Well, I'll just say, if anyone's struggling with the DLC or any boss for that matter, just practice, honestly. Just practice. I've told this to all my friends who have had struggles with the bosses, and they're like, okay, fine, I'll practice. And they do it, and then they beat the boss right after, because they actually learn the moveset instead of just going into the fight and just spamming attack button until eventually they just happen to win by chance. Trust me, practice is the best way to do it, and you'll feel so much better about the kill as well, because you'll feel like you really worked for it, instead of just going into the arena and just spamming R1. That's my last words.
Nice. Well, I do appreciate you hopping on the channel yet again. I'm excited to see what you are able to put out and do. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. Question?
You too.
All right.
Yeah, man.
Peace.